of private patients in private hospitals by medical aid system, by medical aids. And of course, that is something that the department must deal with, and must deal with heavily. South Africans are barely making ends meet. The fact that there are medical aid schemes that are overcharging certain things that shouldn't be charged at that level should be dealt with. And that's why you've got the Competition Commission. But I asked the question, what has the department done since it commissioned that report? We look forward to the regulation and the stricter regulation of medical aid schemes. That's not something that we are shying away from, because ultimately, again, we are concerned about the hard-working South Africans who can barely make ends meet, who have to get a medical aid because they know they can't rely on the public health system. So absolutely, the department must go and crack hard on unfair business practices by healthcare providers.
Just last check. You are saying that doctors are going to leave, they are going to be stressed and all those things. Where are you getting these things? What informs you of those things? Because it's like they're spreading fear amongst people that if this thing happens, there's going to be people that leave. Because where is it taking this idea?
Can I just answer Natasha's question, and then I'll leave. I'll get to Jack now. Natasha, on the question of process, I was very much part of that committee for many years, up until about 2 years ago. So when we're talking about the processes, we had a number of organizations of industry experts who sought to make inputs into the bill, and they did, and the process was opened. But it makes a mockery of the parliamentary public participation process when you receive inputs from people, but then none of those inputs are even reflected in the outcome of the bill. None of the inputs that were essentially given to the department have effectively been implemented. It is not possible, Natasha, that you would come up with a bill from inception in 2019 and in 2024, in spite of all the inputs that you received, not a single thing has changed. Whether it's about healthcare funding, whether it's about how do you deal with doctors, whether it's about the lessons that were learned from the pilot projects, none of those things are reflected in the bill. So one can essentially conclude that the public participation process was a tick box exercise, because we were not able to see any of the inputs that we were able to get reflected. And ultimately, healthcare workers too, Lunga, were consulted. And I'm sure you would have seen a lot of them, particularly the organizing bodies, coming out and saying, in this current form, we do not support the bill. And this is not anecdotal evidence that you get from your doctor friend here and there. These are organizations, unions that are essentially organizing of healthcare professionals. And healthcare professionals themselves are saying, we wouldn't know where to begin with this kind of bill as it stands. No one is saying that we don't want to better the system, but the bill as it stands is not going to better the system. And that's what we've heard, but I can let Jack respond to his point.
Well, essentially, it's been covered. But if you speak to the medical associations, and if you speak to press reports, and the DA gets bombarded with concerns of medical doctors and other health professionals as well. They're very concerned, and just the fact that you're signing this bill, even though we believe that it's going to be tied up in court and it's ultimately unconstitutional, the very fact that it's being done as a pre-election stunt, quite frankly, is having a lot of people worried, including many doctors who say this is the last straw, and they could well emigrate, and we can't afford to lose medical professionals. Thank you.
Right. Cool. Shall we do a last round? Yes, sir. Yes.
Say you are suspicious about what the department can achieve, or the intentions of the president could be justified. But what has the DA done? What has the DA suggested? And this question would not arise if it was any other opposition party. It's particularly important because the DA was in Parliament during apartheid. When the special arrangements were legislated and established, the DA was there. There's no record of the DA ever proposing to say, no, clinics are far from people. We can't have such a large community depending on one clinic. So all these things happened under your watch. I know you were not government, but the DA
Where was the DA?
Well, the DA was there
During apartheid.
Just changed names, rebranded over years, but it has been. It's even there in your website and constitution that you had a lone member in the apartheid government. She was a lone voice and so on.
Not in the apartheid government.
What option are you?
All right. What I will do, and we can have a separate conversation about the history of the DA on the side. But what I will answer is around the alternatives that the DA is proposing. What the DA is proposing is not just simply alternatives that we've desktop researched. It's alternatives that we've implemented where we govern right now, which is in the Western Cape. And so what we are saying here is that there are better ways in which you can improve the healthcare system. You've got to do the hard yards. And this is our criticism of government, that government doesn't want to do the hard work. The hard work is starting at saying, where are we building clinics? Are those clinics in a good condition? Are they staffed? Do they have doctors and nurses? Do they have the requisite medication? How are we catering to elderly people? Chronic medication patients? Are we getting the basics right? Once we get the basics right, we can talk about how then do we expand the service to a lot more people? How then do we essentially improve the service to a lot more people? What government is simply doing is using a populist strategy to simply say, what we are going to do is we're going to make everything right with the system, when in fact that's not the case. Where we've got alternatives that are tabled, we've got alternatives that were tabled in Parliament in our minority report, where we've said these would be the sections we would change in the bill. We participated in the bill from the beginning to the end, making sure that we were part of the clause by clause process, because it is our job as members of Parliament and lawmakers to make sure that we participate in the legislation making process. But when the ANC uses its numbers in Parliament to shut down any other differing voices, what other alternative do you have except to turn to the court and say, here are constitutional concerns that we have with this legislation? It has been done before. There's precedent where legislation has had to be sent back in order for it to be constitutional. Again, I repeat, our concern is only about the better healthcare services of all South Africans. Yeah, so look, I mean, we've got strictly 30 days to do it, and so our lawyers, as I said, have already been briefed when the bill came before the president. So it's unclear as to on which date we'll be able to file, but we are already at an advanced stage with putting together the case. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. It's been a long day, eh? I'm sure you know.